Donna Clara stood outside the grand restaurant, her heart racing with excitement and a hint of nervousness. It was a place she had always dreamed of visiting, with its elegant facade and the soft glow of chandeliers visible through the large windows. Today was special, her birthday, and she decided to treat herself to a meal in this upscale establishment. As she entered, a wave of cool air greeted her, mixed with the tantalizing aromas of gourmet dishes. The decor was exquisite, with plush seating and fine art adorning the walls. For a moment, she felt like she belonged in this world of luxury. The host at the entrance, a sharply dressed man with a tight smile, glanced at her and raised an eyebrow, but quickly composed himself. "Welcome," he said, his tone lacking warmth. "Do you have a reservation?" "No, dear. I just came to celebrate my birthday," Clara replied, her voice steady despite the subtle disapproval in his expression. "Right this way," he said, leading her to a table in a dimly lit corner, far from the bustling center of the restaurant. Clara felt a pang of disappointment as she settled into the chair, but she brushed it aside. It was her day, and nothing could take away her joy. As she scanned the menu, her eyes danced over the gourmet options. She could hear laughter and clinking glasses from nearby tables, where elegantly dressed patrons reveled in their meals. The atmosphere felt electric, but she sensed a difference. The staff moved past her with barely a glance, their whispers just audible enough to catch her attention. "Can you believe she thinks she belongs here?" the young waiter muttered to a colleague, his voice dripping with disdain. Clara's heart sank, but she refused to let their words mar her special day. With a deep breath, she called for the waiter, hoping for a pleasant interaction. However, when he arrived, his demeanor was cold. "What can I get for you?" he asked, barely making eye contact. "I'd like the grilled salmon, please, and a glass of your finest white wine," she said, trying to keep her voice cheerful. "Sure. Anything else?" he replied, tapping his pen impatiently, clearly eager to move on. Clara shook her head, feeling the warmth of embarrassment creeping up her cheeks. As he walked away, she noticed a manager, a stern-looking man, watching her from the bar. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment, and she felt a chill run down her spine. Despite the unease, she tried to focus on the decor and the ambience around her. She was here to enjoy herself, to celebrate the many years of hard work and perseverance. This was her moment, and she refused to let anyone take it away. Just then, Clara's thoughts were interrupted by the waiter returning with her meal. "Here you go," he said, placing the dish in front of her without so much as a smile. "Thank you," she replied, determined to savor every bite. As she took her first forkful of salmon, she noticed the glances from the staff, snickers, whispers, and the occasional snide remark. It was as if they were trying to convince themselves that she did not belong there. Feeling a mix of anger and sadness, Clara looked around the restaurant. The other patrons, most of whom were white and dressed in designer clothes, appeared oblivious to her plight. Some were engrossed in their conversations, while others savored their meals, completely unaware of the judgment being passed upon her. Clara thought of her life and the obstacles she had faced. Growing up in a small town, she had fought against prejudice and inequality. Her parents had instilled in her the importance of self-respect and perseverance. They had worked hard to provide for her and her siblings, teaching them that their worth was not determined by the color of their skin. Yet here she was, decades later, experiencing a familiar sting of rejection. The memories of her youth came flooding back, of being told she couldn't sit in certain places, of being judged for her appearance, of feeling invisible in spaces where she should have felt valued. Despite the swirling feelings of anger and hurt, Clara held her head high. She had faced more significant challenges in her life than the condescension of a few snobby restaurant workers. This day was about celebrating herself, and she would not allow anyone to dim that light. With each bite of the delicious salmon, she reminded herself of her strength and resilience. She was not just an elderly black woman in a fancy restaurant. She was Donna Clara, a woman who had lived a full life filled with stories, struggles, and triumphs. And she would make this day count, no matter the attitude of those around her. As she enjoyed her meal, Clara noticed a small group of women at a nearby table whispering and pointing in her direction. Their laughter echoed in her ears, and she felt the urge to get up and leave. But she resisted, reminding herself that she had every right to be there. Clara took a sip of her wine and closed her eyes, allowing the flavors to wash over her. For a brief moment, she felt transported away from the negativity surrounding her. She thought about her children and grandchildren, how she had taught them to stand tall and be proud of who they were. They had grown up with the knowledge that they were deserving of respect, just like anyone else. Suddenly, a loud voice cut through her thoughts. "Excuse me, ma'am. You can't sit there." The manager had approached her table, his expression hard, as he crossed his arms. "Why not?" Clara replied, surprised. "I've ordered my meal, and I'm enjoying my birthday. This isn't a place for you. I think it's best if you leave," he said, his tone dismissive and condescending. Clara's heart raced, but she took a deep breath. "I'm a paying customer, just like everyone else here. I deserve to enjoy my meal in peace." The manager smirked, his disdain palpable. "This isn't the kind of place you should be in," he said, attempting to belittle her further. Despite the pressure building inside her, Clara stood her ground. "I won't leave. I have every right to be here, just as much as anyone else. I won't be intimidated." As she spoke, she noticed a few patrons glancing over, some intrigued, others uncomfortable. This was not how she had envisioned her birthday dinner, but in that moment, she felt a flicker of determination. She would not let them take away her dignity or her right to enjoy this experience. Clara's heart pounded in her chest as the manager stood over her, his presence oppressive and dismissive. She could feel the eyes of the other patrons on her, a mix of curiosity and discomfort as they witnessed the unfolding drama. For a moment, the restaurant seemed to hold its breath, caught in a tense silence that made Clara feel both vulnerable and powerful. "Ma'am, please," the manager persisted, his voice dripping with condescension. "This is a fine establishment, and I'm sure you understand that not everyone can afford to be here." Clara felt the heat rise in her cheeks, not from shame but from indignation. "It's not about money," she replied firmly, locking eyes with him. "It's about respect. You might not like the color of my skin, but that doesn't make me any less deserving of being here." The manager opened his mouth to retort, but before he could speak, a commanding voice interrupted. "What seems to be the problem here?" All heads turned toward the entrance, where a tall man in a tailored suit strode in, his confident demeanor instantly shifting the atmosphere. Clara recognized him immediately. The owner of the restaurant, Mr. Thompson, a respected figure known for his philanthropy and community involvement. "I've received complaints," the manager started, trying to assert his authority. "Complaints? About what?" Mr. Thompson asked, his brows furrowing as he stepped closer to Clara. His gaze softened when he saw her, and she sensed a sudden shift in the energy surrounding her. "Clara, is that you?" Clara blinked in surprise. "Yes, it's me," she said, her heart skipping a beat. "Do you know me?" Mr. Thompson smiled warmly, his demeanor changing entirely. "Of course. You used to come into my mother's flower shop all the time. You helped us out when we had trouble with our deliveries. It's been years. I can't believe you're here. Clara felt a wave of warmth wash over her as the memories flooded back. Mr. Thompson's mother had owned the only flower shop in their neighborhood, and Clara had often stopped by to lend a hand, sharing stories and laughter with the family. It had been a simple, joyful time, far removed from the harshness of the world outside. As Clara exchanged pleasantries with Mr. Thompson, the manager's expression soured, realizing he had lost control of the situation. "But, sir," he started, only be cut off by Mr. Thompson's firm voice. "Let me handle this," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He turned back to Clara, his eyes sparkling with recognition. "I'm so glad you came. Please, let me get you a better table. I want to ensure you have a fantastic experience." "Thank you, Mr. Thompson," Clara said, her heart swelling with gratitude. "It's been a challenging evening, but I appreciate your kindness." "Don't thank me yet," he replied, smiling as he motioned for her to follow him. "We'll fix this right now." As they walked toward the center of the restaurant, Clara could feel the eyes of the other patrons on her again. This time, however, their gazes were filled with curiosity rather than judgment. She felt a sense of relief wash over her as the atmosphere shifted from tense to welcoming. Mr. Thompson led her to a beautiful table adorned with a fresh bouquet of flowers, just like the ones from his mother's shop. "This is perfect," he said, gesturing for her to take a seat. "I want you to enjoy your birthday in style." "Thank you so much," Clara said, feeling a smile spread across her face. The day was turning around, and she couldn't help but appreciate the unexpected turn of events. Once seated, Mr. Thompson glanced back at the manager, who stood fuming in the corner, clearly embarrassed and out of his depth. "I'll be personally overseeing Clara's meal tonight," he declared, his voice booming. "Let's make sure she has the best service possible." Clara couldn't help but smile. "You really didn't have to do all this." "Nonsense. You deserve it. And I want to hear all about what you've been up to," he said, settling into the chair across from her. As the two engaged in conversation, Clara felt a sense of camaraderie building between them. They reminisced about old times, sharing laughs and stories. Mr. Thompson listened intently as Clara recounted her life's journey, the challenges she had faced, the family she had built, and her deep commitment to her community. "I've always believed in giving back," Clara said, her voice filled with passion. "It's essential to uplift each other, especially in our community. We have so much to offer, but sometimes the world forgets that." Mr. Thompson nodded, his eyes reflecting understanding. "I couldn't agree more. That's why I strive to support local businesses and initiatives that empower our community." Their conversation flowed effortlessly, and Clara felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had come to the restaurant feeling like an outsider, but now she felt like she was in the presence of an old friend, someone who understood her struggles and triumphs. As the waiter approached, Clara felt a flutter of anxiety. She hoped he would treat her with the respect she deserved now that Mr. Thompson was present. The waiter's eyes widened as he realized who was seated at the table. "Mr. Thompson, I didn't know." "Don't worry," Mr. Thompson interrupted, a hint of sternness in his voice. "Just ensure Clara receives the best service." "Yes, sir," the waiter stammered, his demeanor shifting completely as he took their orders. After he left, Clara turned to Mr. Thompson, her expression serious. "Thank you for standing up for me. It's not something I expected today, especially from a place like this." "It's the least I could do," he replied, his tone sincere. "No one should be made to feel unwelcome. You belong here, Clara, just as much as anyone else." Their conversation continued, filled with laughter and shared stories. Clara felt lighter, free from the weight of discrimination that had burdened her earlier. The food arrived, beautifully plated and bursting with flavor, and Clara savored every bite. As she sat there, surrounded by good food and warm company, she realized that her birthday wasn't just about celebrating her life. It was about recognizing her worth and the power of community. And in that moment, she felt a renewed sense of hope, determined to carry that spirit forward in her life. As the evening progressed, the ambience in the restaurant shifted into a warm glow, filled with laughter and clinking glasses. Clara felt enveloped in a bubble of joy as she and Mr. Thompson exchanged stories, memories weaving a tapestry of their shared history. For the first time that evening, Clara could genuinely enjoy the celebration of her birthday. After they finished their main course, Mr. Thompson raised his glass, his voice carrying a hint of excitement. To Clara, a woman of resilience and grace. May this year bring you even more success and happiness. Clara blushed, raising her glass in return. Thank you. To new beginnings and unexpected friendships. As they sipped their drinks, Clara couldn't help but glance around the restaurant. The atmosphere buzzed with energy, but her gaze caught the eye of the manager, who was still lurking nearby, his expression dark and brooding. A knot tightened in her stomach as she recalled the confrontation from earlier. She wished she could just enjoy her evening without any lingering tension. Mr. Thompson, noticing her discomfort, leaned in closer. "Everything okay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "Yes, just a little uneasy about earlier," Clara admitted, glancing back at the manager. "I hope he doesn't try to cause any more trouble." "He won't," Mr. Thompson assured her. "I've made it clear that we don't tolerate any disrespect toward our guests. Just enjoy your evening." Clara smiled, appreciating his kindness. She turned her attention back to their conversation, but a shadow loomed over their table, breaking her focus. It was the manager, his posture rigid and his eyes narrowed. Clara's heart sank as she braced herself for another confrontation. "Mr. Thompson, if I may," the manager interjected, his tone sharp. "I think it's best that we discuss the situation from earlier. I don't believe this is an appropriate setting for this kind of person." The words hung in the air, thick with tension. Clara felt her stomach twist, but she held her ground, refusing to let him intimidate her again. Mr. Thompson's face hardened as he met the manager's gaze. "Are you really trying to justify your actions?" Mr. Thompson's voice was low but powerful, cutting through the restaurant's ambience. "Clara has every right to be here, just like anyone else. Your behavior was unacceptable, and I won't let you undermine the integrity of this establishment." The manager scoffed, crossing his arms defensively. "You're putting this place at risk, allowing just anyone to walk in and think they can take a seat. We have standards to uphold." Clara's anger surged, a fire igniting within her. "I am not just anyone," she said, her voice steady and resolute. "I've worked hard for everything I have, and I deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. Your prejudice is what puts this restaurant at risk, not me." The room fell silent, every eye now on their table, captivated by the escalating confrontation. Clara's heart raced, but she felt empowered, bolstered by her words and the presence of Mr. Thompson beside her. "Clara, I can assure you, I will not allow this behavior to continue in my restaurant," Mr. Thompson asserted, his tone unyielding. "You are not only a valued guest, but a part of our community. I won't let anyone's ignorance tarnish that." The manager's face flushed with anger, his jaw clenched tightly. "You're making a mistake, Thompson. This is going to backfire on you. I'll be reporting this," he spat, turning sharply on his heel and striding away. As he walked off, Clara felt a sense of triumph wash over her. mingled with a tinge of apprehension. She had stood her ground, but the repercussions of this encounter lingered in the air. Would the manager retaliate? Would she face more discrimination in the future? Mr. Thompson leaned closer, his expression softening. "Don't worry about him," he said, his voice low and reassuring. "He's just upset because he knows he crossed a line. I'll handle it." Clara nodded, grateful for his support. "Thank you for standing up for me. I didn't expect this kind of treatment in a place like this." "Neither did I," he replied, shaking his head. "It's disheartening to see people like that still in positions of power, but we have to keep pushing forward." Their conversation resumed, but Clara felt a new sense of urgency in her heart. She realized that this was more than just her fight. It was about standing up for everyone who had faced similar prejudices. She thought of the young people in her community, the ones who looked up to her as a mentor. She wanted to show them that their voices mattered, that they could make a difference. After dessert, Mr. Thompson insisted on treating Clara to a special birthday drink. He ordered a bottle of vintage champagne, and as the waiter poured their glasses, Clara felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. "Cheers to you, Clara," Mr. Thompson said, raising his glass once more. "May you continue to inspire others with your courage." "Cheers," Clara echoed, her heart swelling with emotion, "to standing up for what's right." As they clinked their glasses, Clara's resolve solidified. She would not let fear dictate her life. The world could be harsh and unfair, but it was also filled with opportunities to create change. She would use her voice and her experiences to advocate for those who felt voiceless. After finishing their drinks, Clara and Mr. Thompson lingered at the table, discussing plans for upcoming community events. Clara felt hopeful for the first time in a long time, her spirit lifted by their conversation and the bond they were forming. But as the night wore on, the unease she had felt earlier crept back into her thoughts. The manager's hateful words echoed in her mind, a reminder of the discrimination that still lurked beneath the surface. "I'm determined to change things," she declared, her voice firm. "This isn't just about me anymore. It's about making sure that everyone knows they belong, regardless of their skin color or background." Mr. Thompson smiled, pride shining in his eyes. "I believe in you, Clara. Together, we can make a difference." The restaurant buzzed with life around them, but in that moment, Clara felt as though she and Mr. Thompson were in their own world, united by a shared vision for a brighter future. With newfound determination, she knew that her journey was just beginning. As the night deepened, Clara and Mr. Thompson exchanged stories about their lives, the laughter and camaraderie forming an invisible bond between them. Each tale unveiled another layer of their personalities, revealing shared values and experiences that transcended their age and backgrounds. Clara felt a warmth in her heart that she hadn't experienced in years. "Did I ever tell you about my grandmother?" Clara asked, her eyes lighting up. She was a force to be reckoned with. "Taught me everything I know about standing up for myself." Mr. Thompson leaned in, intrigued. "No, you didn't. What was she like?" "She was fierce," Clara chuckled, recalling the woman who had shaped her worldview. She had a heart of gold, but was unyielding when it came to her beliefs. When faced with discrimination, she would say, "Don't let them dim your light, Clara. Shine even brighter." Mr. Thompson smiled, his gaze thoughtful. "That's beautiful. It sounds like she inspired you a lot." "Absolutely," Clara replied. "I wouldn't be the woman I am today without her guidance. She fought through her challenges and instilled in me the importance of resilience." Just then, the waiter arrived with their check, and Clara reached for her purse, but Mr. Thompson waved her off. "Tonight is my treat. You deserve to be celebrated." "Thank you," Clara said, grateful but slightly embarrassed. But next time, I insist on paying. Deal, he replied, grinning as he settled the bill. And I'll hold you to it. As they left the restaurant, the night air was crisp, filled with the distant sounds of laughter and music from nearby establishments. The streets glimmered under the soft glow of streetlights, and Clara felt a renewed sense of purpose surging within her. "Are you free this weekend?" Mr. Thompson asked as they walked. "I'd love to introduce you to some people in the community who share similar passions. We're organizing a local event to address racial equity, and your voice would be invaluable." Clara's heart raced at the thought. "I would love that. It's important to have these conversations and create change together." "Exactly," Mr. Thompson agreed, his enthusiasm palpable. "We need to engage people in our community, encourage them to share their stories, and unite against discrimination." Their conversation flowed effortlessly as they made their way to Clara's apartment. The evening's events had ignited a spark of determination in Clara, and she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Once they reached her building, Clara turned to Mr. Thompson, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over her. "Thank you for everything tonight. You've really made my birthday special." "It's my pleasure," he replied warmly. "You deserve every bit of joy, Clara. Remember that." With a wave and a smile, Clara stepped into her apartment, closing the door behind her. The familiar silence enveloped her, but it felt different now. There was a sense of hope and possibility lingering in the air, and she couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change. As she settled onto her couch, Clara's mind raced with ideas for the upcoming event. She could envision a gathering filled with laughter, stories, and a collective determination to make a difference. Clara wanted to create a safe space for voices that had long been silenced, where people could share their experiences and inspire one another. Over the next few days, Clara immersed herself in preparations for the event. She reached out to her network, inviting friends and acquaintances who she believed would contribute to the cause. Each call brought a sense of urgency and excitement, fueling her resolve to create a platform for change. On the day of the event, Clara arrived at the community center early, her heart pounding with anticipation. The room buzzed with activity as volunteers set up chairs, hung banners, and arranged tables filled with snacks and refreshments. Clara took a moment to breathe in the energy, feeling a mix of nerves and exhilaration. Mr. Thompson arrived shortly after, bringing with him a group of engaged community members. He greeted Clara with a warm smile and an encouraging nod. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "I think so," Clara replied, a grin spreading across her face. "I've never organized anything like this before." "You're doing great," he reassured her. "Just remember, everyone is here to support each other." As the event kicked off, Clara welcomed the attendees, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. She felt a wave of emotion as she looked out at the diverse crowd gathered before her. People from different backgrounds, ages, and experiences filled the room, each one united by a shared desire for change. Clara began by sharing her own story, the struggles she had faced, the prejudices she had endured, and the lessons her grandmother had taught her about resilience. The audience listened intently, their expressions reflecting a mix of empathy and understanding. Together, we can create a community that values every voice, every experience, Clara said passionately. It's time to break down the barriers that divide us and come together to lift each other up. As she spoke, Clara could feel a palpable shift in the room. People began to nod, some even clapped, encouraging her to continue. After her speech, the floor opened for discussions, and attendees began sharing their own stories of triumph and adversity. The energy in the room swelled as people found their voices. Clara moved through the crowd, engaging with different individuals, listening to their experiences and providing support where she could. Each story resonated with her, further fueling her determination to fight against discrimination. By the end of the night, Clara felt a sense of fulfillment wash over her. She had witnessed the power of community, the strength that comes from sharing experiences, and the hope that arises when people unite for a common cause. As the event wrapped up, Mr. Thompson approached her, pride shining in his eyes. "You did it, Clara. This was incredible. Thank you. I couldn't have done it without your support," she replied, overwhelmed with emotion. "Let's keep this momentum going," he suggested, his voice filled with determination. "Together, we can make a real impact in our community." As they cleaned up, Clara felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey she had embarked upon. The path ahead was still uncertain, but she was ready to face it head-on, armed with the strength of her community and the spirit of her grandmother echoing in her heart. The following week, Clara found herself riding a wave of optimism. The event had ignited a passion within her that she hadn't realized existed. Each morning, she woke up excited, eager to continue the conversations that had sparked during the community gathering. She spent her days reaching out to local organizations, forming alliances and brainstorming ideas for future events. However, the warmth of this newfound purpose was tested when she decided to return to the upscale restaurant where the incident had taken place. The memory of her birthday dinner lingered in her mind, and she wanted to reclaim that space for herself. Clara believed in the importance of confronting uncomfortable situations head-on, and this felt like the right opportunity. On a rainy Wednesday evening, she dressed carefully in a vibrant blue dress that hugged her figure comfortably, feeling confident and ready to face whatever lay ahead. As she walked toward the restaurant, her heels clicked on the pavement, each step resonating with the strength she had found within herself. Upon entering, Clara was immediately met with the familiar ambience of elegance and luxury, but the shadows of her previous experience lingered. She scanned the room, her heart racing as she spotted the same waiter, Jake, and the manager, Mr. Reynolds, who had treated her with disdain just a few weeks prior. They were at the bar, sharing a laugh, oblivious to her presence. Gathering her courage, Clara approached the host stand, where a new hostess greeted her with a polite smile. "Good evening, ma'am. Do you have a reservation?" "I don't, but I'd like to dine here tonight," Clara replied, her voice steady. The hostess looked uncertain, glancing back at Jake and Mr. Reynolds. "Of course. Right this way," she said, leading Clara to a table near the window. The view was beautiful, with rain softly pattering against the glass, creating a serene atmosphere. As Clara settled into her seat, she noticed the hesitation in the hostess's demeanor. It seemed that word of her earlier experience had spread, but she refused to let it deter her. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through her notes for the next community meeting, allowing herself a moment of focus. Soon, Jake approached her table, his smile faltering as he recognized her. "Welcome back to our restaurant," he said, his tone forced. "Thank you, Jake," Clara replied, maintaining eye contact. "I'm here to enjoy a meal." "Right," he muttered, glancing nervously at Mr. Reynolds, who was now watching them from a distance. Clara could feel the tension in the air as she ordered her meal, intentionally choosing one of the more expensive dishes on the menu. She wanted to assert her presence, to show that she belonged in this space just as much as anyone else. Once her food arrived, Clara took a moment to enjoy the meal. The flavors burst in her mouth, and for a moment, she savored the satisfaction that came from standing her ground. But soon enough, she noticed Mr. Reynolds striding toward her with a stern expression. "Can I help you?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Clara," he said, crossing his arms defensively, We need to talk about your last visit. I believe I've already shared my thoughts about that evening, Clara replied, her tone firm. I was treated disrespectfully, and that's unacceptable. Look, we have a certain clientele to cater to, he replied, his voice dripping with condescension. Not everyone appreciates the ambience we create here. Clara felt her heartbeat quicken. What do you mean by that? Because I'm black, I shouldn't be here, Mr. Reynolds scoffed, but Clara could see the glimmer of panic in his eyes. That's not what I meant. It's just that. Just what? Clara pressed, her voice rising. You're assuming I don't belong here because of your prejudices. This is exactly the type of behavior that needs to change. You should be ashamed of yourself. His face turned red, and Clara could see the crowd around them beginning to notice the confrontation. Murmurs erupted as people turned their heads to watch. Maybe you should leave, Mr. Reynolds said, his tone harsh, but Clara stood her ground. This is a fine dining establishment, and you're making a scene? A scene? Clara exclaimed, disbelief washing over her. What about the scene you created last time I was here? It's time for you to understand that I deserve to be treated with respect, just like everyone else. At that moment, Clara saw Mr. Thompson enter the restaurant, his presence immediately calming. He caught sight of Clara and made his way over, concern etched on his face. Clara, is everything okay? Not really, she said, pointing toward Mr. Reynolds. This man thinks he can tell me where I belong. Mr. Thompson's demeanor shifted as he addressed Mr. Reynolds directly. Is this how you treat your guests? With disrespect and discrimination? The manager stiffened, caught off guard by the sudden intervention. I was just what? Mr. Thompson interrupted. Letting your prejudice cloud your judgment? Clara has every right to be here, and she deserves to be treated with dignity. The atmosphere in the restaurant thickened as other patrons began to look on with interest. Clara felt a surge of empowerment. She wasn't alone. She had allies in her fight against discrimination. I suggest you apologize, Mr. Thompson continued, his voice steady. This isn't just about tonight. It's about the culture you perpetuate in this establishment. It needs to change. For a brief moment, silence hung in the air. Clara could see the gears turning in Mr. Reynolds's mind, and she wondered if this confrontation might actually spark a change. Finally, the manager relented. I apologize, Clara. I shouldn't have treated you that way. Clara nodded, but she knew the fight wasn't over. Thank you, but it's going to take more than words. It's time to create an inclusive environment here for everyone. As Clara sat down, Mr. Thompson pulled out a chair, signaling his solidarity. I'm proud of you, Clara. You stood up for yourself. I didn't do it alone, she replied, her voice filled with gratitude. Thank you for being here. Their conversation resumed, but now it was laced with a renewed sense of purpose. Clara knew that change wouldn't happen overnight, but this was a step in the right direction. She felt lighter, knowing she was making a difference, not just for herself, but for others who might find themselves in similar situations. As the night continued, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that she was part of something bigger. She was determined to use her voice to advocate for justice and equality, not just within the walls of the restaurant, but in her community as a whole. The following days after her confrontation at the restaurant felt like a new beginning for Clara. She was invigorated by the support she had received and the steps she had taken to stand up for herself. The incident had ignited a fire within her, a desire not only to reclaim her space in society, but to advocate for change on a broader scale. Motivated by her experience, Clara organized a community meeting to discuss racism and discrimination in local establishments. She reached out to various community leaders, inviting them to join the conversation. Clara wanted to create a safe space for others to share their experiences and strategize on how to address systemic racism in their community. On a bright Saturday morning, Clara arrived at the community center, her heart racing with anticipation. The hall was modest but warm, with sunlight streaming through large windows, illuminating the faces of those who began to gather. She had arranged for refreshments, and as the smell of coffee filled the air, Clara felt a sense of purpose wash over her. One by one, community members trickled in, each carrying their own stories of discrimination and resilience. Clara greeted them with a smile, encouraging everyone to take a seat and help themselves to snacks. The room buzzed with chatter, a mix of excitement and nervousness as people settled in. "Thank you all for coming today," Clara began, her voice steady yet warm. "I know it can be daunting to discuss these issues, but it's crucial that we share our experiences and learn from one another. Together, we can create a positive change in our community." The audience nodded, some exchanging glances as they realized they were not alone in their struggles. Clara introduced several speakers, each sharing personal stories of racism they had faced in various settings: restaurants, schools, and workplaces. Their words resonated with the audience, creating a sense of solidarity that hung in the air. As the meeting progressed, Clara felt the energy shift. She had set aside time for open discussion, encouraging attendees to voice their thoughts and ideas. Hands shot up across the room as people clamored to share their insights. "I think we should organize a petition," suggested Malik, a local artist known for his advocacy work. "We can call out businesses that don't support equality and encourage people to take their money elsewhere." "That's a great idea," Clara responded, feeling her spirits lift. "If we can gather enough signatures, we can present it to local government and media outlets. Visibility is key." A chorus of agreement filled the room, igniting a collective enthusiasm. Clara took notes furiously, capturing each idea that emerged during the discussion. Someone else proposed workshops for local businesses, teaching them about inclusivity and diversity. Another suggested art installations around the city to promote awareness and provoke conversations about race. As the meeting wore on, Clara sensed the camaraderie in the room deepening. They were united in their mission, their passion palpable. She could see that everyone was eager to take action, and she felt a swell of hope for the future. But amidst the excitement, Clara noticed a few familiar faces in the back of the room. Jake and Mr. Reynolds had decided to attend, standing quietly as observers. Clara's heart raced at the sight of them. This was not only a community meeting, it was also a chance to confront them again. She took a deep breath, her resolve strengthening. "I want to address the elephant in the room," she said, locking eyes with Jake and Mr. Reynolds. "You both have witnessed the impact of discrimination firsthand, and I hope you'll take this opportunity to listen and learn." The room went quiet as all eyes turned toward the pair. Clara could see Jake shift uncomfortably, his face flushed. Mr. Reynolds, on the other hand, stood rigid, as if preparing for battle. Clara's voice softened, but her determination remained unwavering. "I believe everyone deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of their race or background," she continued. "It's crucial for those in positions of power like yourselves to understand the responsibility you hold in shaping a welcoming environment." Jake cleared his throat, glancing at Mr. Reynolds for support. "We want to learn. We've recognized that we need to do better," he said hesitantly. "We're here to listen." The audience shifted, surprise mingling with skepticism. Clara felt a mix of emotions, hope and doubt intertwined. "Thank you for being here. It's a start," she said, her voice steady. "But true change requires action, not just words." Mr. Reynolds stepped forward, a hint of defensiveness in his tone. We understand that we have made mistakes, but it's important for everyone to also acknowledge that our restaurant has a reputation to uphold. We cater to a diverse clientele. Catering to diversity doesn't mean excluding or demeaning others, Clara interjected. It's about creating a space where everyone feels welcome. You need to educate your staff, implement anti-racist training, and actively promote inclusivity in your business model. Malik chimed in, this is not just about one restaurant. It's about changing the culture in our community. We need businesses to step up and support us. The tension in the room shifted as the audience rallied around Clara's words. She could see that the momentum was building, that their voices were powerful when united. As the meeting drew to a close, Clara felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. They had sparked a conversation that could lead to meaningful change, and the camaraderie they shared was invigorating. The group agreed to form committees to continue their advocacy efforts, ensuring that the discussions would not end here. Clara looked around the room, her heart full. Let's keep this momentum going, she said, her voice ringing with determination. This is just the beginning. After the meeting, Clara stayed back to talk with attendees, grateful for the connection she had made. It was a profound moment, knowing they were all committed to fighting for a better future together. As Clara left the community center, the rain had stopped and the sun peeked through the clouds. She felt a sense of renewal, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She knew they still had a long road to travel, but together, the weeks following the community meeting buzzed with energy and anticipation. Clara found herself at the forefront of a grassroots movement, galvanizing support to address the issues of racism and discrimination in their town. She organized meetings, distributed flyers, and collaborated with local activists, all while balancing her daily life. Clara's phone buzzed incessantly with messages of encouragement and invitations to speak at various events, a testament to the momentum she had sparked. As Clara prepared for another meeting at the community center, her heart raced with excitement. This gathering was particularly important because it was time to revisit the restaurant incident with Jake and Mr. Reynolds. They had agreed to attend, and Clara hoped this would be a turning point not only for the restaurant, but for the entire community. When Clara arrived, the room was filled with familiar faces and a palpable sense of urgency. Community members were eager to voice their thoughts and opinions, and Clara could feel the weight of their expectations. She had prepared a list of topics to address, from actionable steps to foster inclusivity in local businesses to the importance of holding establishments accountable for their actions. As the meeting commenced, Clara welcomed everyone, her heart swelling with pride at the turnout. "Thank you all for coming today," she began, her voice strong and steady. "Today, we will address our concerns with the recent events at Reynolds Restaurant and discuss how we can work together to ensure a more inclusive environment for all." Jake and Mr. Reynolds took their seats at the front, looking tense but determined. Clara could sense the atmosphere shift as everyone focused on them, waiting for their response to the community's concerns. "First, I want to acknowledge the mistakes that have been made," Jake started, glancing nervously at Mr. Reynolds. "We understand that our actions were wrong, and we're committed to learning from this experience." Clara nodded, appreciating his openness. "Thank you for being here and willing to engage in this dialogue. It's essential that we not only acknowledge past mistakes, but actively work toward change." Mr. Reynolds shifted in his seat, a hint of defensiveness still lingering in his demeanor. "We're here to listen and to discuss ways to improve our restaurant. We want to make sure everyone feels welcome," he stated, his tone firm. Clara took a deep breath, ready to lead the discussion. "We appreciate your willingness to engage. However, listening is just the first step. We need to implement concrete actions to demonstrate your commitment to inclusivity." A lively discussion erupted, with community members sharing their thoughts on what changes they would like to see at the restaurant. Suggestions range from diversity training for staff to promoting events that celebrate Black culture and heritage. Clara facilitated the conversation, making sure everyone had a chance to speak and that their voices were heard. As the conversation progressed, it became clear that many attendees were skeptical about whether Jake and Mr. Reynolds truly understood the gravity of their past actions. Clara sensed the tension and took it upon herself to address it. Jake, Mr. Reynolds, I think it's important to recognize that change requires more than just words. It requires accountability, Clara said, her tone calm yet firm. What specific steps can you commit to today to ensure that your restaurant becomes a more inclusive space? After a moment of silence, Jake nodded, seemingly processing the gravity of the situation. We're willing to implement mandatory diversity training for our staff and to collaborate with local organizations to promote cultural events, he replied. We want to actively support and uplift the community. Clara could feel a wave of hope wash over her. That's a great start, she encouraged. But I think it's also vital to establish a feedback system where customers can voice their experiences and concerns. Mr. Reynolds nodded slowly, his expression softening. We can create an anonymous suggestion box at the restaurant and have regular meetings with our staff to address any issues that arise. As the meeting continued, the atmosphere began to shift. Clara witnessed community members softening their stances as Jake and Mr. Reynolds showed genuine willingness to engage in constructive dialogue. Slowly but surely, the conversation transformed from skepticism to cautious optimism. By the time the meeting concluded, the room buzzed with renewed energy and hope. Clara felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing they had made progress in advocating for change. Attendees exchanged contact information, eager to collaborate on upcoming events and initiatives. Thank you all for your commitment today, Clara said, standing before the group. Let's continue to hold each other accountable and support one another in this journey toward creating a more inclusive community. As the crowd dispersed, Clara felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Jake standing there, looking a bit more relaxed. Can I talk to you for a moment? He asked, his voice sincere. Of course, Clara replied, gesturing for him to follow her to a quieter corner of the room. I just wanted to say thank you for your patience and for challenging us to do better, he said, his expression earnest. I didn't fully understand the impact of our actions until now, and I'm committed to making sure our restaurant becomes a place where everyone feels welcome. Clara smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. I appreciate that, Jake. It's important for us to move forward together, and I believe you can make a difference. As they spoke, Mr. Reynolds approached them, a thoughtful look on his face. Clara, I want to apologize for the way things were handled at the restaurant. I realize now how my actions contributed to a culture of exclusion, and I want to do everything I can to change that. Clara nodded, feeling a mixture of emotions. Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Acknowledging the problem is the first step, but it's crucial that we continue this dialogue and ensure that your restaurant truly reflects a commitment to diversity. As they parted ways, Clara felt a surge of hope. It was a significant moment, one that marked the beginning of a new chapter for their community. She knew there would still be challenges ahead, but she also felt empowered by the progress they had made. Together, they were paving the way for a brighter future, one where everyone could dine freely, without fear of discrimination or judgment. That night, Clara sat on her porch, reflecting on the events of the day. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting warm hues across the sky. She felt grateful for the connection she had made and the strength of her community. As she watched the stars emerge, she realized that the journey was far from over, but they were on the right path. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity and transformation at Reynolds Restaurant. Clara had taken a leading role in collaborating with Jake and Mr. Reynolds, ensuring that their commitment to change translated into actionable steps. Community meetings became a regular occurrence, drawing in a diverse crowd eager to contribute to the restaurant's revitalization and the broader mission of inclusivity in their town. Clara's efforts bore fruit as the restaurant introduced new initiatives aimed at embracing and celebrating diversity. Jake and Mr. Reynolds implemented monthly cultural nights, inviting local artists, musicians, and chefs from various backgrounds to showcase their talents. The first event, dedicated to African American culture, was met with enthusiasm. The menu featured traditional dishes, and the atmosphere buzzed with music and laughter. On the night of the event, Clara arrived early to help set up, her heart racing with excitement. The restaurant had undergone a beautiful transformation. Vibrant decorations adorned the walls, celebrating Black history and heritage. Local artists displayed their work, and a stage was set for the live music performance later that evening. The energy in the air was electric. As the doors opened, Clara welcomed guests, her smile radiating warmth and enthusiasm. Families, friends, and newcomers flooded in, eager to experience the special night. Clara felt a sense of pride in how far they had come, knowing that the efforts of many were finally paying off. As the night progressed, Clara mingled with guests, sharing stories and laughter. Jake and Mr. Reynolds moved about, ensuring that everything ran smoothly. They greeted patrons with genuine smiles, the atmosphere feeling more inviting than ever before. Clara observed the transformation in their demeanor. They were no longer merely restaurant owners, but active participants in fostering community. Halfway through the event, Clara took a moment to step outside for some fresh air. The cool breeze felt refreshing against her skin, and she took a deep breath, savoring the moment. Just then, she noticed a familiar figure walking toward her. It was her son, Marcus, who had driven over to surprise her. His face lit up with excitement as he approached. "Mom, this place looks amazing," he exclaimed, pulling her into a warm embrace. "I'm glad you're here, Marcus," Clara replied, her heart swelling with joy. "It's our first cultural night, and it's turning out to be fantastic. I can see that." "The energy is incredible," he said, looking around. "I'm so proud of you for leading this initiative. You've inspired so many people." Clara felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. It's been a team effort. The community really came together, and I'm just happy to be part of it. As they chatted, Clara noticed Jake approaching with Mr. Reynolds. They both looked eager to join the conversation. "Marcus, I'm glad you could make it," Jake said, extending his hand for a handshake. "Thanks for having me," Marcus replied, shaking Jake's hand with a friendly smile. Mr. Reynolds chimed in, "Marcus, it's great to see you here. We really valued your mother's input throughout this process." Clara felt a sense of camaraderie as the four of them engaged in light conversation, sharing laughter and anecdotes. For the first time, she saw Jake and Mr. Reynolds as allies rather than adversaries. The night was a celebration of progress, and they were all part of it. As the evening unfolded, local musicians took to the stage, filling the restaurant with soulful melodies. Clara watched as guests danced and mingled, the atmosphere alive with joy and connection. She felt a profound sense of fulfillment, realizing that this event was more than just a dinner. It was a step toward healing and understanding. Later in the evening, Clara took the stage to express her gratitude to everyone involved. "Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate our community," she began, her voice resonating with warmth. "This event symbolizes more than just a dinner. It represents the power of unity and understanding. Together, we are paving the way for a future where everyone feels welcome, valued, and respected." The crowd erupted in applause, and Clara felt her heart swell with pride. "Let's continue this journey together, supporting one another and ensuring that our community thrives." As the night drew to a close, Clara felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had witnessed the fruits of their labor, the connections they had forged, and the change they had inspired. Jake and Mr. Reynolds approached her, their expressions earnest. "Clara, we couldn't have done this without you. Jake said, his tone genuine. "Your passion and determination have made a significant impact, and we're grateful for your guidance." Mr. Reynolds added, "We're committed to keeping this momentum going and ensuring our restaurant remains a space of inclusivity." Clara smiled, feeling a sense of hope for the future. "Thank you both for your willingness to listen and learn. Together, we can make a real difference." As the crowd slowly dispersed, Clara stood outside the restaurant, watching people leave with smiles on their faces. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment and gratitude for the support of her community. This was just the beginning, and she knew they had much more work to do, but the night had proven that change was possible. Clara looked up at the stars, feeling the weight of her journey lift off her shoulders. She knew that the fight against racism and discrimination would be ongoing, but she also knew that they were no longer alone in that fight. They had come together as a community, and together, they would continue to rise, challenge injustices, and celebrate their shared humanity. With newfound determination, Clara headed home, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. The restaurant and its newfound commitment to diversity were just one chapter in their ongoing story, and she was eager to see what the future would bring.